so glad to have Stephanie with us.
Thank you, Jacob.
She is our guru for small
Did you
church
have to
youth
look
ministry.
to remember my name? Was that it?
I'm so glad to have Stephanie. No. So Stephanie, a little bit about her. She's been involved in youth ministry in lots of different ways for more than 30 years. She's the author of Thriving Youth Ministry in Smaller Churches, 99 Thoughts for the Small Church Youth Worker. And she's a senior consultant for Ministry Architects, living in Houston still.
I am living in Houston.
Yes. That's
Any
right.
any
There we go.
Texans?
Yes. There we go. All right, so Stephanie, tell us a little bit about your story, a little bit more in detail about your history in youth ministry.
Oh, there you go. Well, in my first youth group, Jesus was in my first youth group.
Perfect.
And Les Christie and I led it. Sure. I got started out. Someone came to me at the church I was going to and said, "Hey, Stephanie, you are in your 20s and you can breathe. You'd make a great youth worker." And so that was in 19, never you mind. And so I started out. I had no idea I was going to be in youth ministry because I was going to make a fortune in the music business industry. I had graduated with a music/business degree, and I was gonna be a female Berry Gordy kind of person, and just have artists working for me. I was gonna make a fortune, and then I took this youth ministry thing until a real job came along, and that was in 1980. Wow.
Well, through all of that transition of being a music business person into youth ministry, I'm sure that you've learned a lot of stuff over the years since then.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about what makes effective youth ministry in a small church setting.
That's a great question. Well, first, did I tell you I have 7 kids? No. So you did not know that?
No.
That's why I travel.
Okay.
A lot. My husband and I wish we'd taken up knitting. But anyway, I probably shouldn't have said that. You can cut that out later, Jacob. Anyhow, so what happened was I really actually got involved and was hired by large churches. And I was at this church and had like a couple of hundred kids, and then got into the ordination process in my faith tradition. And in my background, you don't start. You get sent to churches. You're appointed to churches, and you don't get appointed to big churches. So I was hired on at this church, and they had 9 kids, and I'd come from like a couple of hundred to having 9 kids, and I'm thinking, what do you do with this? They'd actually all fit in the church van. It was great. And so I started looking for resources and for how to kind of translate curriculum and games, which felt like they were structured for 50 kids, and to do this with 9 kids or 7, 8, 9 kids. And there really wasn't anything. So I got a hold of a friend of mine. His name's Rick Lawrence, and he writes for Group Magazine. And we kind of had some conversation about it and said, there's nothing out there. And he said, well, why don't you write it? So I just started writing it, and now in my work with Ministry Architects, I get into a lot of small churches, and I find out that it's sort of always who I was meant to be. My dad was a pastor, and he served in small churches, and I feel at home in it.
So then let us in on a little bit of the secret behind how do you plan and program if there's a chance that maybe only 1 or 2 students might show up.
Oh, that's
how do you
big
build a calendar based off of that sort of
Well,
stuff?
it's a great question. The thing that I think most people need to know is that most churches are small. The median size church in America is 76 people. There's as many smaller as there are larger, which means that the majority really of churches have 100 members or less. 90% of churches in America are 299 members or less. And so there are lots of small churches. And actually, with what's happening in the church world today, medium-sized and larger churches are becoming smaller. They're the ones struggling. Small churches know how to be small. They know how to make it work. It's the medium churches that are struggling because they're sort of losing staff and having to downsize, and they don't know how to do that. But the advantages of being in a small church are that you can know every kid's name. You can actually kind of fulfill a bunch of things with one or two easy planning things. For an example, we're coming up into December, right? And so our high schools have their annual Christmas concert, or there's the Christmas play. Well, when you're in a small church, not only can you make that a youth event, you can make it a church-wide event. In fact, it's smart to do that. Small churches need to not do too many things. I think sometimes we try to do too many things in small churches to keep up with the larger churches, and so all of our stuff sort of gets done in maybe a mediocre fashion. But imagine this. Imagine then that it was a church-wide event that everybody went to see the high school kids in their Christmas concert, and you had a dessert bar afterwards at the church. So it was kind of like a show and dessert. And these kids look out from the stage and see a whole 2 rows of 20 people from their church. All the old folks in the church got a great concert. The youth ministry maybe kind of hosted them a little bit, and everybody had a great time, and everybody wins. How you calendar if 1 or 2 people show up, don't plan things that need a certain number. Don't assume you're going to meet the minimum to go to the water park and get the free tickets. If it requires 15 kids to absolutely be there to do it, then don't plan it. Always have a plan B that deals with numbers, but this is no different than dealing with a large group. You always have a plan B or C. If you have 50 kids show up, you have a plan. If you have 100 kids show up, you have a plan. If you had 200 show up, you have a plan. It's the same with smaller churches. You always have a plan, but the number one rule is if you have just 1 kid show up, you still do the event. You never cancel. Never send the message that, well, you 3 weren't worth doing it, so we're going to cancel this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And so thinking about if the median-sized church is 76 people, that means that the median youth worker is volunteer.
Yes, the most small church youth workers are volunteer.
Right, yeah.
And if they're paid at all, they're paid like maybe 10, 15 hours a week.
Right.
The average youth group in America is only 7 to 8 kids.
Right.
So that's most youth groups in America.
Sure.
The thing is you come to an event like this and you see larger groups, it's because these are the churches that can afford to send their people here. Sure. But whereas just average Joe and Jill out there doing youth ministry in their small church is most likely a mom and a dad kind of just doing what it takes and loving on their kids, and there's a lot of benefits to it. You can know every kid's name. You can go on every kid's turf. You can make quick last-minute changes. It's easier to turn that ship around. If you've got 200 people, it's like trying to turn around the Titanic. But sure, if you've got 10 kids, it's just turning around a little tugboat, It's so much easier to make course corrections with small kids. And then you could actually get yourself a minivan and be able to fit all of them into your vehicle. It's sort of fun.
Yeah. So then thinking about as a volunteer youth worker who doesn't get paid on a staff at a church, how do I manage my time effectively? How do I make sure that I'm resourcing enough parents and other people in the church to be a part of youth ministry in a way that it's not necessarily come and be a part of the separate thing that we do with students, but how do we cross-pollinate those two groups?
Is that a great question? That is the success for small churches. And I think it actually is the lesson that medium and larger churches, as they grow smaller, don't know how to do. They don't know how to integrate as well. Whereas small churches know they are already integrated. If a small church is going to have a pumpkin patch, for an example, it takes every member of the church to do it. If a small church is going to have the annual church Christmas talent show, it takes the whole church to do it. They know how to cross-pollinate or how to integrate. That's the secret, though, to successful youth ministry, is to make sure that there is a place at the table, so to speak, for the youth ministry at every event. In a small church, youth ministry doesn't really run in its own circle. It takes children's ministry and youth ministry are very intertwined in small churches. It takes everybody to make everything run. And so actually they're the place that medium and larger churches can look to make sure that it happens.
Yeah. So then one final question for you. For a small church youth ministry, how do you set up a ministry that exists when you leave? Like how do you work so that when you transition out, whether it's you move or
you
the
just
life
somebody
change
else's,
happens,
right.
how do you make sure that the stuff that goes on doesn't just dissolve? And does that relate to the previous question?
Yeah, it's really, that's a great question. It's the same, the answer is the same as it is for larger ministries. Solid systems and processes have to be in place. If it's all stuck in one person's head, then it does leave with them when they go. But if you have a great system for data management, a great system for volunteer recruiting and maintaining, developing, I think the greatest gift any ministry or any ministry worker, whether small, medium, or large church, can give as a legacy are awesome ministry event notebooks, whether they're 3-ring binders or a file uploaded into the cloud, something that says, in writing, this is how we run our annual trunk or treat. This is how we run our annual spring retreat. So all the details are somewhere, and then that means the ministry is sustainable beyond you. That means the ministry is about the ministry and not you.
I love that. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for the way that you pour into youth workers. Can we thank Stephanie?
Thank you so much.